I made it.
What? Oh. Oh. Okay. Okay. you want me to go on my own computer?
Yeah.
Oh, did you send me the
You have to go into Holy Blossom.
Holy Blossom? And where's the
Okay, it says you're in the waiting room. Admit. Okay. There you are.
I'm not in though.
I see.
Mark, there's the big feedback because we're.
You got to go on mute.
I'm on mute. It's just we're too close together. I'm gonna have to take this
Okay,
upstairs.
keep going. Hello. Can't hear you yet.
Hi, everything well with you?
Good, good. Your volume's a little low. Let's see if I can increase it. Okay, how are you?
Can you hear me okay?
Now I can hear you well. Good.
I'm just going to adjust my laptop a little bit so I'm not lit up, so to speak. In fact, I'm beside a window.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that's better now. Okay, everything well with you?
Everything is fine. How about yourself?
Good, pretty good. My wife participated in the service at in our former congregation in Chattanooga this morning. Hello, sir.
Mr. Michael Sachs. Hi.
So we were tuned into Chattanooga this morning
Oh, that's interesting.
because she was participating.
Oh,
Hello, sir.
I don't know. Michael, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
There we go. Hi.
How are you?
Rabbi Tepper, this is my friend Michael Sachs,
How are you? How you doing?
longstanding member of Holy Blossom, and he's up in Collingwood, I believe.
Exactly. You can see the reflection of the lake back there.
It looks beautiful. What a great way to start the
Couldn't
year.
have better services on a day like today.
It's wonderful.
So I just read a bit of the background of Stern and, the Machzor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. As we're talking, I see people who are in the waiting room.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm admitting them from the waiting room. So if I look a little distracted, that's why. It's a fascinating story. This is a very fascinating story.
I just looked at it on Wikipedia.
Eva,
There's Eva.
we still have about 5 minutes to go.
Yes. Must have been interesting for you. Must have been interesting for you to be connected to Chattanooga.
Yes,
No.
that's very nice. It's a very nice shade of green paint you have on the wall there, where Eva's speaking from.
He's in Collingwood. Oh, and Eva's in her office.
Okay. Is that in your house?
Yes.
It's very nice. Very nice. And you're in another part of the house.
That's right.
We were at Holy Blossom last night for our Yom Kippur, and we were at Holy Blossom for most of Rosh Hashanah last week. But as I said before, my wife had the opportunity to participate in service this morning with our former congregation in Chattanooga. So they made her an offer she couldn't refuse. So everything was tuned in to our congregation. It started at 10 o'clock and it finished about quarter to 12. And then they're picking up again about 2 o'clock, I think. And finish about 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. So that's the way we used to do it when I was there.
You know, your audio,
We always had a congregational break fast. They're not having it this year for obvious reasons because of COVID. But congregational break fast has always been the tradition there. Everybody pitches in, everybody brings things. There's enough food until next week. You know what I mean?
yeah. Your audio has a bit of an echo to it. I'm hearing a bit of an echo to your audio. It's not crystal clear.
You want us to put mute on ours? You want me to mute mine?
Yeah, why don't you mute? Eva's muted.
I'm mute.
Okay.
Rabbi, if you can try speaking just to see if I mute it, if it's better.
Sir, do you think you could, with the beautiful background of the lake or the river or whatever, do you think you could use the chat box and type in your first name so I can address it by your first name? You know, the chat box is at the bottom of the screen.
Can you join us?
Oh, Michael and Julie said, okay.
Hi.
We're just after 1:30. Hi, Julia. Rabbi Tepper, Michael's been joined by his wife, Julia Sachs. And it may just be us for this session. We're just after 1:30. Oh, no, somebody's joining us now. Eric.
Okay, Mark, you can go ahead and start. Okay.
We have one person joining us. Eric, welcome.
Thank you.
And even though it's a small group, this is being recorded. So let me do a brief introduction for the purposes of the group and also for the purpose of the recording. My name is Mark Madras. I will serve as the host of the study session today. Thank you all for joining us. We're delighted that you were able to join us. This is a fascinating topic and a compelling topic. It's a testament to faith, to courage, to commitment, and to hope in the darkest of all possible times and in the darkest of all possible circumstances. It's my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Bill Tepper. Rabbi Tepper is a native of Toronto. He served as a congregational rabbi for 8 years in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and subsequently from Toronto on a commute basis for Temple Shalom in Winnipeg. We're fortunate to have him back in Canada. He resides in Toronto with his wife, Deborah, and his son, Max. On a personal note, I came to know Rabbi Tepper this past year as a wonderful and talented educator, one of my teachers of the Melton program, which was taught at Holy Blossom. So it's really a personal pleasure to introduce Rabbi Tepper. Note, please, that I'm muting all participants to eliminate distracting background sounds, which on Zoom may have the effect of redirecting the camera and the mic away from the presenter. If you have questions, please direct the questions primarily through the chat feature on your Zoom page. I will be following the chat, as will Rabbi Tepper. Rabbi Tepper will pause at intervals during the presentation to review the questions in chat and to respond to them. Rabbi Tepper has a hearing impairment. We therefore encourage you to use the chat feature to ask your questions and to direct your comments. There may be points along the presentation where you'll be invited by Rabbi Tepper to unmute yourself to ask questions orally, and that may be easier in this small group setting. Please understand, however, there may be a need to revert to using chat, even in those circumstances. If you are asking a question orally, please ensure you're visible on the screen, as that will help Rabbi Tepper to take your question. Lastly, this is being recorded. The link to the session will be posted on the Holy Blossom Temple website and accessible to all who may visit the site, members and non-members. So enough of the introductory comments. Let's get to the topic at hand. Rabbi Tepper, we're excited to hear from you. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. And I'm also very thankful to Holy Blossom for giving us this opportunity. Can you all hear me all right? Okay, that's great. That's great. So I'm thankful to Holy Blossom. I had the opportunity to do this last year as well, but in person. I was actually at the temple for that. And so I'm grateful to have been invited again this year to learn with you. And very, very thankful to Mark for outdoing himself over the past few weeks and helping to make sure that this runs smoothly. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And Bruchim Habayim, welcome to all of you. And Shana Tova and Chatima Tova. That is a good year and a good ceiling, a good fast, but a good ending to this day. The most sacred day of our Jewish year. And just something on the subject of fasting, and it has to do with the Machzor, not the Machzor we're going to be exploring, but just the new Machzor that was put out by the Reform movement about 5 years ago. And one of the beauties of that Machzor that's used by the Reform movement, it's called Mishkan HaNefesh, is that it makes allowances and even offers blessing for those who cannot fast. Because as we know, not everyone is able to fast. So the new Machzor and the Reform movement, I have it right here, one, Mishkan HaNefesh for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur. It sort of is understanding that people are diabetics, people have health issues, people have high blood pressure. Not everybody can fast. Okay? Throughout, just one more thing. As Mark advised, I don't have to speak uninterrupted. So if you have any questions or thoughts by any means that you want to share over the next hour, please, as Mark advised, just use the chat box and we'll all be on the same, I was going to say we'll all be on the same page, but we'll all be on the same screen, if you know what I mean. Okay? So throughout the Jewish world right now, people like us are gathered for prayer, blessing, reflecting on life's meanings, but they're also gathered right now to learn. And here at Holy Blossom, as elsewhere, it's an honored tradition to, on Yom Kippur afternoon, to assemble and to perpetuate Talmud Torah, means ongoing, lifelong Jewish learning. At this time, we may be physically apart, but may no one refer to this experience as social distancing, because we're still connected. We're still in relationships with one another. We still care for one another. And to borrow, adapt words of our Pesach Seders, next year back at Holy Blossom. I'm very proud of my personal Machzorim collection. I have quite a few of them. Some of them go way, way back. This one was brought over from Vilna in Lithuania by my family in the 1920s, and it has a place of pride on our shelves. This one, some of you might remember, the Union Prayer Book for the High Holidays, fit in the back pocket. Yeah? And of course, I just showed you the newest one from the Reform movement, but I also have a collection that represents all the different Jewish persuasions. Are all intended for different audiences and for different students of liturgy. They're all variations on the High Holy Day text with which you and I are familiar. None of them, however, are anything remotely like the Wolfsberg Machzor of 1944. None are inscribed with the stub of a pencil on scraps of what were once cement sacks. None, I believe, no matter how learned their authors, were written entirely from a single person's memory. And none were written by and for people who would all but surrender their hope of ever experiencing the High Holidays again. So I'll begin by talking about Naphtali Stern, the author of the Wolfsberg Machzor. Naphtali Stern was born in 1910 in the Romanian region of Transylvania, that in the wake of World War II became part of Hungary. He was the chief cantor in the community of Szakma, a term that's also associated with an ultra-Orthodox sect of Judaism that flourishes in the United States. According to a 1941 census, almost 13,000 of Szakma's 50,000 population were Jews. That's more than a third were Jews. Naphtali Stern was an admired leader, cantor of the city's Kehilat Yarim. Yarim Hebrew for forests. So the congregation was called the Community of Forests, the Community of the Woods. Until 1944, the Jews in this area and most of Hungary had not yet been subject to the horrors that were afflicting Jews elsewhere in Europe. But in April of 1944, when Hungary's loyalty to the fascist cause came into question, the German forces, through their Operation Marguerite, came to occupy Hungary and the Satmar community. Naftali Stern and his family, his wife, and 4 young children, ages 14, 10, 9, and 6, were confined to the ghetto, and then a month later, in May of 1944, the ghetto was liquidated, and the Stern family, with approximately 20,000
Cheryl,
others, were deported to Auschwitz.
Cheryl,
Upon their arrival in Auschwitz, Stern was separated from his family, all of whom were directed to their death by the blue danube whistling and monstrous Dr. Joseph Mengele. Stern was sent to the forced labor camp of Wolfsberg, where, like approximately 2,000 others, he engaged over the following year in back-breaking work from morning to dark, 7 days a week, digging roads, tunnels, trenches, clearing forests, moving heavy stones, and dragging 500-pound railway tracks, all accompanied by a starvation regimen. As Rosh Hashanah in the fall of 1944 approached, Naftali Stern somehow, spiritually, emotionally, physically, managed to move past the catastrophes all around him and focus instead on recording the prayers and blessings for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and organizing a minyan to mark the days during which you and I continue to acknowledge God's presence in our lives. More than one of Stern's fellow prisoners thought him demented, but Stern would not be deterred. In an act of extraordinary forfeiture, Stern sold his daily bread ration in exchange for a pencil and the empty cement sacks. Tearing the sacks into smaller pieces, he proceeded to write a high holy day text for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, entirely from memory, in a clear, lovingly rendered Hebrew script that can still be read by visitors to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem today. For reasons that remain unknown, the Germans allowed the Jews to hold their Rosh Hashanah service, the only time this was allowed during the entire year-long existence of the camp. This Rosh Hashanah service is described in an essay by Dr. David Halvini, who contributes to the Yad Vashem published edition. And Mark, in a short while, Mark will be bringing up the images from that published edition, but this is mine. Wolfsberg Machzor 5705. Wolfsberg labor camp, Germany, 1944. Huh? So this is a Yad Vashem publication. But Dr. David Halvini later became one of the foremost Talmudic scholars in the United States. He recalled, I too was an inmate in Wolfsberg, and I remember the prayer service. The service was held in an overcrowded hall, and still a young man of 16, I could not push my way in and had to remain outside. But what went on inside left a deep impression. This was the only time that we were permitted to gather together in the camp and pray out loud. The prayers that were uttered on that day were the traditional ones, the same ones that we hear and are familiar with today, but composed at that time in a different age and under very different conditions. In May of 1945, 1 year after his arrival, Stern and his fellow surviving prisoners were liberated by the Soviet forces. Stern returned to Satmar and he remarried his second wife, also a survivor of the Nazi horrors. In 1950, the family immigrated to Israel and the city of Bnei Brak, where Stern lived until his death in 1989. For more than 40 years, he continued to use the cement sack Machzor he had written until, upon realizing that the material was proceeding to deteriorate, donating to Yad Vashem in 1988. Upon presenting his Machzor to Yad Vashem, Stern stressed the imperative of future generations understanding that in spite of the survivors' harrowing experiences, they had maintained their spirit, embraced their Jewish identity, and never lost hope. Stern said, I pray that each subsequent generation will stay true to its Jewish identity and will be a link in a long chain. Now, the Wolfsberg camp. Well, first of all, I want to get this out of the way. Today, however, Wolfsberg is more likely associated with Volkswagen automobiles. Wolfsberg being the original center from which those cars first rolled off the assembly line. As a matter of fact, I found a photograph somewhere as part of my research of Adolf Hitler cutting the proverbial ribbon, opening the plant in Wolfsberg, where Volkswagen, the car for the people, could begin manufacture. But Wolfsberg was also part, and a map will be coming up shortly. Wolfsberg was also part of an expansive network of German forced labor camps known as the Gross-Rosen Camp Network that was established in 1944 in the southern part of Germany, very close to the Czechoslovakian border, and conveniently equidistant from Berlin, Dresden, Frankfurt, Prague, Lodz, and Auschwitz. The Germans had been forced to create these labor camps in rural areas following the Allied aerial bombardment of their industrial centers. Factories were set up underground and in enormous caves. Companies such as Krupp, IG Farben, and one that is still a household name today called Siemens. These companies operated in a mutually beneficial partnership with the German SS. Jews transferred from the concentration camps represented a cheap and near limitless supply of labor. Put plainly, these are workers who were destined to toil until they died from exhaustion, malnutrition, disease, and physical abuse. They endured 12-hour shifts, as I said, 7 days a week in freezing conditions. The camps were connected by tunnels with dormitories built for the prisoners, dormitories that were camouflaged from Allied planes by trees and shrubbery and sealed off from the surrounding German population. This stay-away order to the locals no doubt was undertaken to conceal German treatment of its workers. 30 inmates would be crammed into a single dormitory. The food rations might consist of some black coffee in the morning, bread that would supposed to last for 2 days, maybe some soup, maybe a potato or a turnip, and maybe, if they were fortunate, a piece of cheese for supper. There was no regard for hygiene or sanitation. Lice and typhoid spread like wildfire. The walking dead were either killed on the spot or sent back to Auschwitz for liquidation. More than a few, we might gather, committed suicide. Of the approximately 13,000 Jews who served in these camps during that last year of the war, rabbis, cantors, teachers, scholars, physicians, business persons, lawyers, hailing from Hungary, Belgium, Poland, the Netherlands, and Greece. Of these 13,000, 5,000 died prior to their liberation by the Allies. The Wolfsberg Machzor, and we'll be showing you images of it shortly. The publication from Yad Vashem. The Machzor comprises the standard text of prayers and blessings for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The text opens with the prayers and blessings. This is very interesting in point or outline form, recorded by Naftali Stern, perhaps out of fear that he would run out of writing materials. On the final page, so to speak, he lists the names of all of his fellow prisoners who had died while they were there. Died from starvation, from physical violence, or overwork. The prayers and blessings, however, they're written other than their abbreviated form and point form. They're the same prayers and blessings that we recite today. I even opened up my Machzor. I opened up more than one just to check. After 70 years, they are still legible. The lines are straight, and they're composed with a sure and steady hand. And fittingly, we can apply the term Yad Vashem, which may be translated as a hand and a name, or a hand of God, to Stern's endeavor, because it may have been Stern's own hand with which these prayers and blessings were recorded, but there's no doubt that they were divinely inspired. He knew these. He had sung them for years as a chazan in the synagogue of his Satmar community. And he had found a place for them in this nightmare that today we call the Shoah. A substantial portion of this published edition, hold it up again, is comprised of commentary, meditations, and reflection on the nature of Jewish history, punishment and reward, sin and atonement, free will and faith. All vis-a-vis God, Judaism, and as today is the Yomim Norim, the days of awe. Why are these days different from all others? Why are we drawn to them and to one another in ways unlike the many other sacred times that adorn our Jewish calendar? The text asks us, both the text of the Machzor and the commentary, asks us to think and to feel very carefully about the meaning of these days, who we are, where we came from, and whom we're destined to become. Now, the final 20 pages of this published edition, and which we'll be showing you part of momentarily, the final 20 pages of publication consists of artwork, paintings, sketchings, but most of which are now on view at Yad Vashem. There are many of these works that depict prayer and festival rituals in the ghettos and the camps. As one of the editors reminds us, I see the artists inhabiting the same circle as believers, with the stubbornness reserved for the naive. Both artist and believer clung to faith in God or in art, in times and places during which we find it difficult to conceive of either God or art. Both the believers and the artists immerse themselves in a spiritual realm in order to rise above the horrors of their circumstances, while sanctifying and preserving the human I. I am a person. I'm a human being. And I'm a Jew, with which we were created in the image of God. B'Tselem Elohim. Among the traditional prayers chanted during that 1944, 5705 Rosh Hashanah service of Wolfsberg, one was uttered, and again, everyone, it can be found in Gates of Repentance, the burgundy Machzor that we use at Holy Blossom. One was uttered as a prayer of the heart with unique kavanah. And kavanah means intention. It means to chant, to recite with more meaning that can be imagined. It is unique to the incomparable conditions within which these prayers were uttered. And what are those words? They're on page 35, actually, in Gates of Repentance. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Maloch al kol ha'olam b'chvodecha. Our God, the God of our ancestors, reign upon the entire world in your glory. It's a part of the Amidah for Rosh Hashanah. And according to the editors of this published edition, we call upon God to assume sovereignty and prevent the forces of catastrophe from prevailing. In other words, that all the world might one day come to eradicate the conditions that gave rise to the Shoah, that gave rise to Wolfsberg and other forced labor camps. And may it be God's will to repair the injury caused by substituting the profane for the sacred. This time, I'm going to ask Mark to begin to screen share for us. And as we go through, I'll share with you the meaning of all this, what they're about. Okay, so whenever you're ready, Mark.
Just give me a moment here to find the screen.
Okay, it's okay. We're not going anywhere.
Um, Sorry, just a moment.
Okay. by the way, in case that looks like a moose behind me on the top of the cabinet, Michael Davis is nodding his head because he's actually, and Kathy is seen it. It's you're right. It is a moose, but it's also Chanukia. It's a menorah for Hanukkah. And my wife and I, when we were living in the southern United States, we visited a small town and in Georgia, and a small little junk shop in Georgia. And lo and behold, my wife found it. But that's where we found it. So moose menorah.
Right.
Where?
The last.
Okay. hang on. There we go. Sorry, folks. Now we should share the screen. There we go. Are you seeing that?
Okay, good, great. Okay, great. Okay.
Sorry. We're good.
Good. Okay. So let's go up a bit. Okay. All right, everyone. And I know there's some of you have your screens on the side, but I'll explain. This is a map of where the camps were situated, and I've circled where Wolfsberg is, and there's an arrow there. You should be able to see that it's almost right in the middle of the page. And you can also see that it was very close to the border with Czechoslovakia, and they were called the Gross-Rosen camps. And all of these red dots represent forced labor camps to distinguish them from, although there was not that much to distinguish, I'm sure you'll agree, to distinguish them from the concentration camps. But these were all the forced labor camps that the Germans had to establish very, very quickly when the major centers came under aerial bombardment and were destroyed. So, and you can also see, it's just very important, you see that it's almost equidistant to Dresden, to Berlin, to Frankfurt on the left-hand side, Lodz, where there was a ghetto in Poland, and even though you might not be able to see it, it's just below Lodz, and some of you have your screen pictures there, but that's where Auschwitz was. Like it says Kato, now Auschwitz was very, very close to that. So that way that would be easily transported prisoners from the camps, from the death camps to the labor camps and back and forth. And it was also close to those major cities. Okay? And this is the southern part of Germany. The northern part of Germany, you may know, is on the Baltic. It's the Baltic Sea. So this is the southern part of Germany. Okay? All right? Let's keep going. Okay. All right. Let me just see if I can move these pictures, hide the videos or hide the pictures. Okay, all right. This is Naftali Stern's own words, and some of it might be blocked out. Michael, would you like to read? Can you see the first two paragraphs? Just do your best in case some of it is blocked out. Have to be right. Okay.
I wrote it down, the Machzor text, so I would not make any mistakes, because as a cantor who had conducted services for many years, I know the prayers by heart. Today, I know there were many mistakes in the Hebrew. For example, I interchanged aleph for ayin and hey at the end of the words. That used to happen to me. We prayed on Rosh Hashanah and the service was lovely, to the extent that one can say that. But on Yom Kippur, we were unable to pray. The Germans evidently were ready for it. On Rosh Hashanah, they tolerated it, the service, and I received a larger portion of soup in the afternoon, which was worth something, and I prayed. The entire service lasted less time than we do it in today.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And that's from the published edition that I've held up. And that's a very interesting admission on his part that I make mistakes. I made mistakes with the aleph and the ayin and the hey because those letters sound very similar. And it's very human of him to share that with us. The next paragraph for 43 years, Kathy Morrissey, could you read that?
Okay. For 43 years, it has always been my Machzor. On Rosh Hashanah, I would take it out and place it before me. I know that it had begun to crumble because I wrote it in pencil on paper from brown cement sacks purchased in exchange for bread rations. I made a supreme effort to preserve this. I did not know back there in the camps that would become a national treasure. If God so wills, it will be before my eyes on Rosh Hashanah. I will come to Yad Vashem on holidays just to see it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's go to the next page. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, all right. Eric, could you read that for us, please, at the top of the page? We, the prisoners. Just have to be unmuted. Yeah. Mark will unmute you. Just a minute.
Okay, hang on. Easier said than done right now. Eric, there'd be a microphone in red that you just click on, and that will unmute you.
Okay, great. Okay, Eric, could you
We
start?
prisoners
You did.
finished our work forced upon them on Yom Kippur Day, and during which Naphtali Stern nevertheless fasted and began to walk the 7 kilometers back to the camp. In the sky I saw not 3 stars, but 3 million. I continued to fast for an additional hour as a thanksgiving offering to the Holy One, blessed be he, for his great kindness. I've lost it. The paragraph is missing now, I think was,
We were surprised in the morning when the Russians reached the camp. And even the German officer who was our commander took off his uniform and put on his prisoner's uniform. We didn't object because he had been reasonably good and not made trouble for us. So again, that's very revealing. We can picture when the, thank you, Eric. Thank you very, very much. I know it was hard to read all of it. But we can picture when the Allies, when the Americans, and when the Soviets were starting to make their way in, have German officers and German soldiers taking off their uniform and replacing them with the prisoners' uniforms in order not to be captured. Okay. All right. That's good. Let's keep moving. Okay. Okay. All right. This is, everyone, this is a typical page. It's from Naphtali Stern's Machzor, okay? It's written in beautiful Hebrew script, okay? It's written in cursive. Of course, when you write using hand, of course, more than likely for Hebrew, you're going to use cursive. There are no vowels, of course, but he knew what it all meant anyway. And you can see by the edges that it was beginning to deteriorate. And that was at that point that he knew that it had to be given to someone or given somewhere where it could be preserved. And Naphtali Stern lived in Israel. He lived within proximity of Jerusalem, and he was aware of Yad Vashem. Okay, so that's where they are now. Okay, so that's good. Let's see another page. Okay, all right. This is the title page. The title page that Naphtali Stern wrote when he gave his Machzor to Yad Vashem. Okay, so it looks like it's in a plastic bag, so I'm not sure if that's how it's displayed or not, but it says Machzor l'Rosh Hashanah Shekatavti, which means Katavti, that I wrote B'machaneh, in the camp of Wolfsberg. Okay, Wolfsberg. There's no W in Hebrew, so we put two vowels together for the W. And it says underneath, it says Elul of 5704. Okay, and because it was not 5705 yet. We all know that New Year's doesn't start until Tishrei. But what's very interesting is that the number, the date, he has the month of Elul, but he has looks like a Zion, the letter Zion, but he has the final Chof, which is worth 20. So the Zion is 7. So that I think it says the 27th of Elul, 5704, which is just a couple of days before Rosh Hashanah on our Jewish calendar. Okay? All right. So he probably wrote that in his own hand as well, because that I wrote. Okay? All right. Okay, this is another, and I guess if you look a little closer to the screen, if you bring your face a little closer to the screen, you can make out this text, and it's all part of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy. Okay, very, very similar, if not identical, to the liturgy that we all embrace on Rosh Hashanah in our own synagogues and temples today. Okay, so here we have four separate pieces, okay? And this is all cement sacks, empty cement sack material, okay? Okay, Mark. Okay, and this is the cover page of the Yad Vashem publication that I showed you. All right. I actually acquired, okay, all right. Just go back one more time, just for a moment. I actually, to the book for a second, just for a second, right. I actually acquired this book about 5 or 6 years ago when I was serving my congregation in the US. I read about it in a magazine, a story about it, and because I have already revealed myself as a collector, I had to have a copy. I just had to have a copy of it. I had to see those for myself. So I ordered it from Yad Vashem, and they sent it to me to my home in my congregation in Tennessee. Okay. It's a remarkable book, a very remarkable book. Okay, all right. So let's go to the next one. Okay, now this is an example, everyone. This is an example of a sample of some of the artwork that's associated with this published edition. And this was by an artist by the name of Arnold Degani. And you can make out, if you look at it carefully, it's the inside of a barracks. Okay, just go back for one moment. Yeah, it's the inside of a barracks of the either dormitory in the labor camp or death camp, and it looks like someone is being lowered. Someone is being lowered down, maybe someone, or he may be lifted up. We don't know, but it's someone who's either being lowered down because perhaps he or she has died in the middle of the night, or someone who's being lifted up because he or she can't make it up to the bunk on his or her own. Okay. This one is by an artist by the name of Felix Bloch. And this is a rendering of, I'm not sure whether it's the actual labor camp Wolfsberg. It may also be maybe from one of the concentration camps. But this is a group of people, men, obviously all men, and they are in the attic. They are squirreled away, so to speak, in an attic of a building, and they are all praying to their God. Okay? You know, I said for a moment, I have to take back what I just said. They may not be all men, because if you look at the right-hand side, the third or fourth person over, that looks like it might be a woman. And also, if you look at the lower, there might be women here, women wearing shadels or kerchiefs, so to speak. Okay? Okay. This is a painting, and this is a painting by an artist. His name was Felix Nussbaum. And it's another painting, one of countless works of art that miraculously survived the Shoah of men in prayer. Now, it's very important, everyone, very, very important that all of these works of art that we're looking at, and we're not looking at, we can only look at a few, but all of these works of art were created during the Holocaust. These are not works of art that were created from memory after the Holocaust was over. These were all created in the camps. So just like, if we can imagine, and this is just like Naphtali Stern, who exchanged his bread rations for pencil and the cement sacks, we can imagine artists exchanging their food rations for something resembling art supplies. Okay? Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, this one is by, his name was Jan Burka, and it's a group of persons in looks like they're in an attic. Okay, you can tell by the roof, walls of the roof, and there's a little stool there on the right-hand side. There's a small bench there on the left-hand side, and you can also see that they're wearing their talit, because you can see the stripes of the talit that they're wearing. Now, the man on the left, and then both of the men on the right, you can see the talit with the fringes. Okay. Okay. Now this was, and this might look very modern, and it may look like something that was created in more recent years. But this was actually done by an artist in Bergen-Belsen in 1944. His name was Pesach, like the holiday, Pesach Ursay. and he was a Hungarian Jew in Bergen-Belsen. And this is one of a large number of works that he created. And it's in a very modernist style. The detail is excellent. But you can see the barbed wire, you can see the barracks, you can see the numbers on the barracks. And it's just very, very, very foreboding. And there's one more. There's another one also by the same artist, Pesach Hearsay, and it's on the inside of a dormitory or barracks, and as comfortable as those people might look, they're all actually prisoners in forced labor camp or another camp, and just waiting for whatever will befall them when they wake up. Okay? Okay, I think that's it with the pictures. Okay? Now we have some time left. I'm being sensitive to the time. I'm being sensitive to the time and Yom Kippur and so forth. I have some questions I want to ask you. Normally I would say, if we were all together in the same room, I'd say, okay, now I'm going to open up the floor, but there is no floor. We're not all on the same floor. So I'm going to open up the screen or open up the group, these questions that I have for you. And again, if you don't mind using the chat for your responses. One second. Yeah. 1 second. I apologize. Just one moment. Okay. So my first question is, and there are no right or wrong answers here. So don't think of this as a quiz, a pop quiz or anything like that. Okay. My question is, what do you think, based on what we've learned in this hour-long gathering, what do you think was the source of Naphtali Stern's strength? Where did he find the strength? Working 12 hours a day, starvation rations, his morale non-existent. Where did he find the strength and the will to acquire those writing materials and then set himself the task of recording the High Holy Text? Your thoughts?
So people, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an icon for chat, and the default position is chat to everyone. And you can type in your answer in the type message here component of the box, and it will be shared with everybody on screen. That really is the preferred way of communicating in this context. So thoughts are welcome through the chat function.
Mark, to send it, do you have to do anything after you've typed it in, or just it goes?
Just hit enter.
Oh, enter.
Okay. Now, we're all so naive. We're all so innocent. we can't come close to imagining what life and death, because life and death were occupying the same space. We can't imagine what it was like for Stern and for his fellow prisoners. So in a place where there was no hope, in a place devoid of hope, where did he find hope? Okay, Michael Sachs says his experience and knowledge we could give to the other people of the camp. That's true, right? We have to remember it's very, very important. In his community in Hungary, he occupied a role of leadership. He occupied a position of responsibility. He was a cantor. Cantors are clergy. And John's singularity of purpose, absolutely. Determination, his perseverance, and his experience, Michael Sachs remarked, his experience as one whose role as a cantor before the Holocaust, perhaps, was to inspire others. I mean, what are rabbis and teachers and cantors? What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to find some way of elevating you. Okay, when you come to talk to us in our office, or when you come to a service, or you come to a learning program, or if we just bump into you on the street, our role is to remind you that you're a person of worth, a person of substance, a person of meaning. Okay? All right. I once told someone that one of the nice things about being rabbi, one of the best things about rabbi, is that you just have to be nice to people and tell people nice things. That's a good thing. Okay. All right. And there's truth in it. There's truth in it. The difference is that, and this is what you and I are in awe of, is that he was able to do this in a labor camp. John Morrissey, the ability to look beyond his situation, just opening that up a bit for myself. Okay. Beyond the situation, God is present in every situation. That's right. I know. It's absolutely right. When I was a full-time congregational rabbi, I was asked countlessly, and I don't think it's one of those questions that rabbis and clergy are asked all the time. And you know what the question is? The question is that where was God when all this was happening? And my answer has always been, and of course, we may have to agree to disagree, but the answer is that God was there. God was with the people. God was giving them what strength God could to sustain themselves. But God was not the one who was putting them in the gas chambers. God was not the one who was cramming them into the cattle cars, the transport cars. God was not the one who was operating the crematoria. It was other human beings who were doing all that. And so what was God doing while this was happening? God was weeping. God was crying. It's very, very tough. Very, very tough subject. But being aware of the Wolfsberg Machzor It reminds us that in a place devoid of hope, hope is still possible. And so we move on. There's some other thoughts or questions. I know we've gone past the hour, but I'm sure no one will begrudge us. I'm sure that the great God of Zoom won't cut us off if we have a few. If we have more thoughts or questions. Oh, I thank you all. I thank Mark Madras. He's a mensch.
Thank you.
We probably exchanged about 165 emails over the last 2 weeks. Okay. But thank you so much, Mark. Thank
Well,
you.
and thank you, Rabbi Tepper, for an interesting and indeed fascinating story. It's one that's tragic and inspiring at the same time. And you presented it wonderfully, and we're also very grateful. And thank you all for joining us for this session. Your participation, your presence, very, very much appreciated. Thank you all.
Okay. Look forward to seeing you all again soon. Be well, everyone.
Easy fast and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Stay well.
Thanks, Rabbi.